Hello and welcome to your Sunday newscast brought to you with the kind compliments of Amalanda Milk. Before we get to our news in detail, let's get to our front page comments brought to you by Kaieteur News. Who is inheriting our wealth? Our parents died and left 10 properties for us. Their 7 children, Dickie, the eldest child, was left in charge of the family estate. 6 months after the death of our parents, Dickie informed us that he had sold one of our prime properties for $10 million. We were surprised and asked him if that was the best deal he could have gotten. He replied saying yes, that was the best offer. A few days after, the brothers and sisters found out that the property he sold was valued more than $100 million. What would you do or say to Dickie if you were one of his brothers or sisters? A few weeks later, he saw people occupying 2 other properties next door to the one that Dickie sold. Dickie was asked, "What are those people doing in our property?" He replied that he had transferred the 2 properties to a local and an international company, but no money was paid. We asked him who are the people behind the companies. He told us he does not know and that he never met them. Days passed, weeks passed, and even months, and Dickie was still not saying anything about our property. What would you as a brother or sister do? Guyana. This is the exact scenario with our oil blocks. The government struck a deal with ExxonMobil for the Stabroek block. Experts said we got robbed. They claimed that we left $55 billion on the negotiation table, and that it was the worst oil deal that they had ever seen. We questioned the political elites agreed that it was a bad deal. They accepted that they made mistakes. But lo and behold, we were yet again told that 2 other oil blocks, the Kaieteur and Kanji, with similar values, were transferred to companies and no monies were paid for those blocks. Now the nation is asking the leaders to say who are the owners of the 2 oil blocks. But they are telling us they do not know or never met these owners. Are they stupid or ignorant? Or, like Dickie, are they as crooked as barbed wire? Now we move on to legalizing stolen assets. Cunning politicians use crooked middlemen to hold, receive, or transfer stolen state assets. For example, politicians would have some of their shady friends establish shell companies, information about which the public cannot access. These companies would then be handed oil blocks or given other state assets. In the past, bribes were paid into politicians' secret bank accounts or that of their relatives. With stricter anti-money laundering and transparency laws, these bribes are now easily detectable. Corrupt politicians, therefore, have devised more elaborate schemes to legalize the proceeds of corrupt dealings. One of the ways in which they do this is through secret, pre-arranged deals in which foreign oil companies would buy in to the state assets held by the shell companies and the friends of politicians. The proceeds of these buy-in transactions then become legal income for the politicians and their shady friends. This is how dirty money is made clean. In the process, stolen state assets are disposed of and the earnings become legitimate money, while the public remains clueless. State assets, such as land, can also be given out to middlemen who are either agents or fronts for crooked politicians, for them to execute stage 2 of the scheme. This occurs when the lands are put on the open market and sold at a staggering profit. The proceeds of these land sales make billionaires out of the politicians and their cronies, while ensuring that the monies earned are cleaned. Just like a drug kingpin with his dirty money and a helpful bank, Guyanese politicians legitimize stolen property through the shell companies established by their cronies. This is the massive Ponzi scheme which is being operated using state assets. The PPPC has handed out the oil-rich Kanji and Kaieteur blocks. The people of Guyana are clueless as to the identities of the persons behind the companies which have been given these blocks. The owners of these blocks reportedly sold 35% share of each block to Exxon. Not one blind cent of this multi-million-dollar transaction is going to be seen, touched, or shared with the ordinary man. It will remain within a closed circle. And now we get to the news in detail. I am Kevin Smith. Whether it is Guyana or one of its regional neighbors, ExxonMobil will have to ensure proper compensation for the damage or loss caused by any unmitigated oil spill from the Payara project, which gets underway by 2024. This is one of the key provisions that the PPPC administration was able to secure during recently concluded negotiations for Payara's environmental permit. This clause was specifically outlined in the permit issued by the EPA. The permit also goes on to state that ExxonMobil's subsidiary, Esso, its servants and or agents will be held liable jointly and or severally for environmental damage due to pollution from its activities within Guyana, its territorial waters, contiguous zones, continental margins, continental shelf, and exclusive economic zone, inclusive of damage to the marine environment, biodiversity, protected species, and natural habitat. In other news, according to a notice, there are close to 250 rape cases up for trial at the Demerara Supreme Court. The numbers of rape cases account for 2/3 of all the cases set to be heard in the court starting October 6, 2020. On the notice, there are 370 cases to be heard. In December of 2019, the police force had reported that Guyana had recorded 4,562 cases of sexual assault and rape. Alarmingly, the force further reported that less than a quarter of the victims received justice. The CID, through the Bureau of Statistics, had revealed in the report that the lowest number of sexual assault cases reported in the last 28 years dates back to 1990, with a total of 82. In other news, even as it begins major oil development works for the Payara project in the Stabroek Block, ExxonMobil will be required to have a metering system in place that will record the volume of all toxins released from instances of flaring. This requirement is clearly outlined in its environmental permit. The rigid provisions state that ExxonMobil will be required to calibrate and maintain a flare metering system in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations and maintain a consolidated record of all flaring events, regardless of size and duration, including beginning times, end times, and volume. The permit of the Payara project also continues, that should be also notes, that there should be detailed reports on the number of specific pollutants emitted from flaring. Many of these toxins are well known as cancer-causing agents. Still on ExxonMobil, even though it has allowed ExxonMobil to dump into the ocean produced water from the Payara project, provided that it is treated to international standards, the EPA has still called on the oil giant to conduct a study on the feasibility of reinjecting all of the water. This was outlined in the company's environmental permit. The call for the study of re-injecting all of the water that accompanies the oil when it is extracted from the reservoir comes on the heels of concerns that Guyana is not following international best practices, which dictate that nations should have a comprehensive understanding of the environmental risks of the produced water's toxicity on marine life before granting companies permission to dump it into the ocean. Research also notes that produced water should only be dumped into the ocean when it is just not feasible for it to be re-injected into the Earth's surface. In Guyana's case, not a single study was done for the Liza Phase 1 or 2 projects, yet Guyana went full steam ahead with approving the permits for those projects. And moving on, Vice President Dr. Bharat Jagdeo said that all the costs being claimed by ExxonMobil and its Stabroek Block partners will have to be audited, and that it's only a matter of time before government moves beyond the pre-contract audit. There is an audit ongoing, he reminded on Friday, but that covers only the period up to 2017. The audit of Exxon's pre-contract cost is being undertaken by UK firm IHS Markit. ExxonMobil intends to recover all of it from the sale of Guyana's oil. Jagdeo said that the audit is essential as it is one of the things that can affect Guyana's share of the revenue. In other news, alleged Ponzi scheme operator Yuri Garcia Dominguez says that all the persons who invested in Accelerated Capital Firm Inc. will be repaid from October 12, 2020. The company also plans on ceasing all operations in Guyana until a license is granted for them to operate. This was revealed yesterday when the accused and his attorney, Dexter Todd, gave an update on how the company intends to move forward and to give clarity on the ongoing matter. Garcia Dominguez and his wife, Atika Ishmael, were accused of running a Ponzi scheme operation in which billions of dollars were swindled out of the pockets of hundreds of Guyanese. The couple is currently before 3 different courts for over 80 fraud charges, which alleged that they obtained monies under false pretense. And that brings us to the end of your Sunday newscast, brought to you with the kind compliments of Amalanda Milk. I am Kevin Smith. Thank you for listening.